The film begins in the small southern town of Alexandria, Georgia, where Walden Dean boards a bus headed to City Hall for a stenography competition. He's aiming to surpass the world record of 360 words per minute, currently held by Mark Kislingbury, but he finishes with a total of 343 words. Afterward, Walden continues his usual routine, walking to work as a court stenographer. Along the way, he meets his friend George, who has the mental capacity of a 10-year-old. At the courthouse, a defendant named Norman Casey Bolt, high on crack cocaine, faces trial for murdering his 3-year-old daughter by placing her in a stove and burning her to the bone for washing her doll's hair. Judge Boyle oversees the case, finds Bolt guilty, and sentences him to death. Bolt angrily charges toward the judge but is swiftly held at gunpoint by Judge Boyle before court security takes him away, leaving Walden visibly shaken. Later, at a diner, Judge Boyle has lunch with Walden, complimenting him on never missing a single word in his 14 years as a stenographer. At home, while cleaning his stenography machine, Walden reviews his notes from Bolt's disturbing case and unexpectedly vomits. The next day, Walden visits the hospital, where a doctor examines him and believes his symptoms are stress-related from his work. Before leaving, Walden is suddenly grabbed by an elderly man who pleads with him to stop her, leaving him confused. Meanwhile, at the sheriff's office, parents report their missing son. Detective Bill Kane questions them, suspecting an abduction. She hands Bill a photograph of her son, Cal, pleading for his safe return. Back at the courthouse, Walden resumes his stenographer duties, but suddenly hallucinates, seeing his mother scolding him for playing with the stenography machine, after which he loses consciousness. At the hospital again, a neurosurgeon suspects Walden might have meningioma, a condition Walden recalls hearing in a previous court case about a suspect whose brain tumor caused erratic and dangerous behavior, eventually leading her to an asylum where she presumably died. The doctor explains these tumors are generally benign, but recommends surgery as soon as possible. Walden realizes he's late for the competition and rushes out. He arrives just in time, achieving a new personal score of 351 words per minute. In the elevator afterward, he's confronted by competitor Emile Duperon, a professional stenographer from New York who only scored 314. Emile suspects Walden might be a savant, though he denies this claim. He reveals instead that stenography runs in his family. His father was a stenographer, and 5 generations of Deans have lived in Alexandria. At the sheriff's office, Detective Sally Hunt hands Detective Bill Kane files on the missing boys, Mexican children, all around 9 years old, who disappeared over the past decade without resolution. Later, Bill picks up his daughter from church and notices the priest interacting closely with the children. That evening, Walden arrives at a bar to meet his father and unexpectedly orders whiskey, shocking everyone who knows he never drinks. He tries persuading his father to move back home, but his father refuses. Afterward, Walden goes to a drugstore, still carrying a bottle of whiskey. Suddenly, a robber storms in, robs the store, and assaults the cashier. Walden intervenes by striking the robber with his whiskey bottle, knocking him unconscious. When authorities arrive, they find Walden shaken. Detective Bill asks him to provide a formal statement at the sheriff's office the next day. Back home, Walden revisits old stenography notes, triggering childhood flashbacks. He recalls his alcoholic mother reprimanding him harshly for playing with the stenography machine, nearly striking him. He remembers overhearing arguments between his parents and recording them with his machine the very night his mother abandoned their family. Walden had secretly wished she'd never return, later learning that she was killed by a drunk driver. The next morning, Walden visits the sheriff's office to give his statement. He finds Detective Bill and the officers frustrated because Norman Bolt has been released due to a technicality. The prosecution failed to submit crucial evidence, violating constitutional procedures. Bolt is now free and has returned home, even ordering a new stove. Detectives Bill and Sally visit Bolt's residence, where he mockingly invites them to inspect his new appliance. Bill warns Bolt he'll be under constant surveillance. That night, Walden visits Bolt's house, attacks and ties him up, forcing his head into the stove. Declaring Bolt's crimes a desecration of humanity deserving punishment, Walden ignites the stove, leaving Bolt to die with his head burning inside. The following morning, Walden receives a call at home from Detective Biddle, who shares news about Bolt's murder, explaining that someone cooked his head inside his own brand new stove. Bill suggests it's karma, but Walden cryptically responds that Satan likely found himself a new chew toy. Later that day, police discover Cal, the missing boy, dead in the woods, apparently strangled. Detective Sally Hunt notices a torn piece of fabric clutched in the boy's hand. Cal's parents arrive on the scene, devastated and inconsolable, prompting officers to calm them down. Walden, curious about the commotion, attempts to approach but is told by Sally to leave since it's an active crime scene. After Cal's funeral, Judge Boyle praises Walden for his bravery during the drugstore robbery. Concerned about the growing violence in the town, Boyle offers to arrange a concealed carry permit for Walden. At the courthouse, Emily visits Walden, inviting him to her family's gathering. Walden is surprised by the size and grandeur of Emily's family home. She playfully points out that the Duperon family, who have been in Alexandria for 6 generations, beat the Dean family's record by 1 generation. After the gathering, Emily drives Walden home and leaves him with a kiss. The next day, Detectives Bill and Sally question George, knowing he is familiar with almost everyone and every case heard in Alexandria's courthouse. They ask if George noticed anyone suspicious recently, but George hasn't seen anything unusual. After George leaves, Sally observes that he's holding a candy bar. At the courthouse during a trial, a doctor testifies about the horrific condition of an elderly victim, describing extensive abuse and severely deformed feet, likely caused by prolonged tight bandaging. Walden suddenly realizes that this victim was the old man who pleaded with him at the hospital. The defendant, Kathrine Mills, the head nurse, had been seen by a patient's son slapping his father. However, due to insufficient evidence connecting her directly to the elderly victim's death, the judge dismisses all charges against her. Afterward, Judge Boyle again advises Walden to stop participating in stenography competitions, but Walden reveals he's met a woman there. He also shows Judge Boyle his new firearm, much to the judge's satisfaction. That evening at the nursing facility, Kathrine notices something unusual about one of the supposedly empty rooms and rushes to investigate. Inside, Walden ambushes her, knocking her unconscious. He then ties her to a bed and brutally strikes her feet with a hammer. Haunted by the elderly man's desperate plea at the hospital to stop her, Walden compels Kathrine to confess that she murdered the old man and other elderly patients. Enraged, he continues beating her with the same belt she once used to abuse her victims. The next morning, detectives discover Kathrine's severely beaten body at the facility, along with the belt used as evidence linking her to the elderly victim's death. That night, Walden and Emily attend a performance together, but Walden suddenly experiences hallucinations of his mother seated nearby, prompting him to abruptly leave without Emily noticing. Meanwhile, Detective Billy and Sally watch as George plays soccer with a boy on the street, offers him candy, and invites him into his house. The detectives immediately follow them, entering as George innocently plays a game with the boy on his iPad. Despite their doubts, Detective Billy arrests George anyway. Later that evening, Walden prays before bed, apologizing to God for going against his teachings, but insisting that he's grown tired of witnessing innocent people suffer and die without anyone intervening. The following day, Walden visits the sheriff's office, asking to speak with George because he believes George could never harm anyone. George insists he's innocent, explaining that local children are his only friends and he'd never hurt them. That evening, Emily arrives at Walden's home, upset that he abruptly abandoned her during their date and refused her calls. Walden calms her with a kiss, and they end up spending the night together. While Walden sleeps, Emily finds and reads his old childhood stenography notes, deeply moved and brought to tears by the trauma Walden endured. When Walden wakes and discovers her reading his notes, Emily pleads with him to throw away these painful reminders, but Walden refuses, prompting Emily to leave. Meanwhile, Detective Bill attempts to question his daughter about the priest, but his wife scolds him for it. Shortly afterward, Walden calls Bill, insisting on George's innocence and urging him to reconsider his arrest. Walden sees 2 thugs following and assaulting 2 women in an alley. He immediately intervenes, shooting and killing the attackers, but suffers a stab wound during the struggle. The following day, Billy visits George at the jail, where George insists he needs to show him something. George and the detectives drive out to an abandoned house outside town. Upon entering, the detectives discover the bodies of the missing boys, all tied to chairs. Meanwhile, Walden awakens from a coma in the hospital, comforted by the presence of his father. After returning home, he receives a visit from Judge Boyle. As Walden escorts Boyle to his car, he notices a torn piece of fabric on the back seat. Later that night, Walden confronts Boyle at his mansion, holding him at gunpoint. Walden reveals what he's discovered, forcing Boyle to admit his crimes against the children, which began when he was 17, completely hidden from his wife. Soon after, detectives visit Walden at home, clearly aware he's the vigilante responsible for the recent killings. They subtly warn him to stop his actions, but Walden pretends ignorance. The next morning, Judge Boyle is found dead, having committed suicide. In the final stenography competition, Walden achieves his highest score yet, 359 words per minute. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button, and if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure. It would be best if you watched the whole movie. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this.